These entitlements may be available to the underpaid Walmart employee, but my workers have to go without things like health insurance, as do I, because we really can't afford it, and we're all classified as too wealthy to qualify. This is patently unfair. If we raise the minimum wage and more of these workers become consumers, they can pay for their own benefits. Big business will no longer be allowed to prey on them. I'm not a minimum wage earner, and probably neither are most of you. I make about 2.5 times the minimum wage. And that's good, because if I didn't, there's really no way I could afford to pay my bills and raise my child. Simply put, rent, utilities, automobile expenses, health insurance, food costs, these things all amount to far more than the poverty guidelines would suggest that the federal government has set, and we all know this. Some will say we live in a capitalist society, and isn't it wrong to limit what people can make up or down? Aren't we preventing small business people from doing what they want with their money? Demanding that they give more to their workers? No, we're just setting a low bar that is dignified and reasonable in a country where the average CEO is making 430 times what the lowest paid worker does. It's obvious that our greed and stupidity as a collective has far exceeded that which is acceptable, and this is a completely necessary balance. As Barnes says at the end of Platoon, those bureaucrats back in Washington want us to fight this war with one hand tied behind our back. He actually says one hand tied to something else entirely, but we're in polite company. We're all here today to talk about making a substantial change in this war on the poor in our state. In this instance, you are those bureaucrats in Washington, and you're being given an amazing opportunity to help those who most need your help. Please don't let them down. They desperately need you to pass this increase. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for having me today. My name is Mike Gadis. Correction, I'm not the owner of Hounds on the Hudson, but I am one of the co-founders of Hounds on the Hudson. I've also founded renovated homes in my neighborhood and offer them as rental units. I've been involved in starting several very community-rooted businesses and ventures, and that's really the perspective I want to bring into here. Senator Sampson, in the beginning, you spoke about putting a face on this, and I hope that the face that I often see missing from the business community when the business community comes together and talks is that small entrepreneur, that mom and pop shop, that deli, that barber shop, that coffee shop. So I want to take my 5 minutes here to take a walk down to the Mansion neighborhood. Some of you might know where that is. It's right here up against the south end. We probably all drive past it every single day. I live and work in that neighborhood. And my neighbors are Jerry, my deli guy, who's been there for 30 years, the barber shop on the corner, the small first generation Islamic people who are running a small deli. These are the faces I see. These are the people who are running and working businesses in my community. In many cases, the proprietors are also the people behind the counter, right? So they're not employing people. My whole community is a working class community. By raising the minimum wage, you lift up my whole neighborhood and give them more buying power to then in turn put back into those small businesses. And for me, as a business owner who wakes up every day and puts my pants and my shoes on and goes out there and tries to make $1 for my family and work really hard, the American dream that drives me is one of entrepreneurship. It's one of small business. That's the business in America that fills my heart every morning when I'm like, this is what I can do. My grandfather did it before me. My father did it before me. I come from a long line of working class entrepreneurs. And so when I think about raising the minimum wage, I see an opportunity to increase the entire buying power of my neighborhood. That means that extra cup of coffee. That means that extra pound of ham. That means that extra haircut. That means whatever it is. And that's going to be direct dollars for my neighborhood. That means someone coming to me and saying, I can cover that security, when they want to rent an apartment from me. So that's what I want to speak to and put a face on it. It's right here. It's less than a five-minute walk, that whole working class community. And the businesses in that community are sole proprietors. They're people who are working, every day, really, really hard. And the dollars that would be introduced in the economy by raising the minimum wage are going to end up directly back in those businesses. That's where those dollars are doing. So I'm here from the business community and as an entrepreneur to say, this is going to stimulate small businesses that are rooted in community. And that's what I see employing people. That's what I see benefiting my neighborhood. And that's the kind of America and kind of business attitude in America that I value and love so much. So I really hope to see that raise. I think it's long overdue. And I thank you for letting me come here and hopefully I help put a little bit of a personal face on the effect that raising the minimum wage would have on my actual neighborhood and the businesses in my neighborhood. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you very much, and I know, Jerry, that you're talking about the small deli owner. But this is what, you know, our Republican colleagues say all the time, business councils, that it will just, it's a job destroyer. It doesn't create jobs, you know, and I'm hearing the opposite from business owners, from those entrepreneurs, and from what you're telling me, the majority of you do pay more than what the minimum wage calls for.
I don't think there's any question that we do, and as that very conservative friend of mine, who most certainly was a Republican and is one, had to say, it's about employee retention. If you want increased productivity at your workplace, you're not gonna pay somebody $7.25 an hour, because they won't work for you, and they're certainly not gonna be very motivated. If you're gonna pay somebody $10, $15, $20 an hour and give them benefits, they're gonna wanna stay there. It's a good motivator. Your productivity increases, you become more efficient and more profitable. I don't argue perhaps that it isn't a job creator. I don't think the minimum wages should ever be about creating jobs. It should be about retaining jobs, and it should be about justice. I mean, our federal poverty guidelines are ridiculous. We have to bring those in line. New York State has to set a precedent. We in California are it. There is no one else. If we don't set the precedent, the federal government will not inevitably follow. You know, we've done it before. We can do it again.
No, I like that point where you're talking about retaining jobs, and it's also about justice, meaning that a moral responsibility that we have to provide, giving people dignity. And I see that you as business owners are doing that, because you're right, it shouldn't be about creating, it should be about just retaining what you have, but also increasing the productivity of your businesses, so you can go out and hire more people. You can go out and give people an opportunity to know that tomorrow will be a little bit better by you giving them the dignity. The best dignity you can provide a person is giving them a job, and giving them the ability to sustain themselves, instead of looking for not only having a job, but also have to depend upon government assistance just to make ends meet.
There's a French politician right now, a friend of mine was pointing out to me online yesterday, who's been excoriated in the French press by the corporatists and the industrialists in France for suggesting that there be a 100% tax rate for those who make more than 300,000 euros a year. And of course, everybody is complaining, because that's insane. That socialism, that kind of control is not something we would allow here. What's interesting is that that's turning the argument on its ear, though. Why is that conversation only taking place in France? Why aren't we talking about the 430 times the average minimum wage earner's salary that our CEOs are making in this country? That's why we don't have a rational, livable minimum wage in the United States, because there are people at the upper echelon who make amounts of money they could never, ever rationalize or justify mathematically. It's impossible. They've never tried. They just make the capitalist argument. And I say, let's stop talking about isms, and let's again just talk about morality. This is what it costs to live at a very basic level. Yeah. Let's call it $20,000 and stop messing around with $10,000 and $11,170. Let's say if people are going to have food and shelter, that they need some very basic access to items that are necessities in life. And in this country, this is what they cost. Federal poverty guidelines aren't there. You know, we're not going to change them from the New York State Senate, but we can raise the minimum wage to a point where at some point in the near future, it at least matches what the cost of living is. That's all workers are really asking for. We're not asking for you to take the 430 times away from the CEO. We're just saying, let's at least have the discussion as a justice issue, rather than talking about job development or economic development. That's not what this is about.
Good point.
Great. Senator Kruger.
Hi, everyone. Liz Kruger from Manhattan. And I'm sorry, I forgot your name, sir, the first speaker.
David Levine.
Thank you, David. So you talked about the trade-off between watching people go on public benefits when they worked versus, you know, paying them a living wage or closer to a living wage, and the ability then for them to go out, and actually all three of you talked about, then they're actually having the money to go and spend in their neighborhood businesses themselves and regenerate economic activity. I'm wondering whether any of you have heard about companies starting up to help businesses get their people on benefits rather than paying them, more wages. And I think for some of us who, actually believe that government should be there to support, to have a safety net, and yet also recognize, really, we're setting up a system where companies decide they're going to pay people a wage level so low that they can't afford their rent or food or health care, but then they're going to subset out getting people on government benefits as a ability to argue, no, you don't need a higher wage, we're getting you food stamps and Medicaid. I just wonder whether you are
So, well,
seeing
there's
any
been
of that with your
right.
work.